Gridiron Grinder! Hut hut hike!
All right, we are rolling. It is Wednesday night before Thanksgiving. Gridiron Grinder time, nonetheless. I am Ryan, and with me, as always, is my buddy James. Just a couple of dudes hanging out, talking about what's going on in the NFL each week. James, man, we are up to episode 122. And so, for all of you guys out there watching, if you're new, James and I do this every week. If you're not new, you know the deal. Lengthy kind of episodes. Check the description. You can jump around. We bookmark everything, yada, yada, yada. So for tonight, we're going to keep things rolling in the regular season here. We're going to kick it off with Name That Stadium like we always do, cover the news from the past week. Then we're going to jump into our Week 12 power rankings and game picks. And last but not least, we'll close it off with Question of the Week. And so with all that being said, how's it going tonight, James?
It's going pretty good. How's it going with you?
So far, so good. And, I guess should probably apologize to everyone for our video and sound quality last week. We had a software snafu, and holy cow, it turned out to be a disaster. We got the video up, but I'm sure it was unbearable to watch. And so this week, we're switching equipment up, switching some things up. Hopefully we'll get it back on track. I think more likely than not, next week we'll get back into a good rhythm because I got a pretty good game plan from here. But hey, sometimes the software gets updated and shit's not compatible anymore, and it's just technology. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, hey, man, with that out of the way, why don't we jump over and do Name That Stadium? You want to take that ball and run with it, Omi?
All right. So this is the segment where I like to travel around, and during the regular season, I generally go to a stadium that's hosting a game that week. And whoever guesses first in the comments where I am will get a super extra special shout out in the following week's show. There might be a bookmark associated with it just so you can flip right to it and hear it. So last week I was at Estadio Azteca in Mexico City. There were some options I had last week, but I figured the week before I completely forgot about the Germany game until we were like halfway into the rolling, and I was like, oh shit, I should have done that one. But last week I went with Estadio Azteca in Mexico City, kind of twofold because of the international game and with also the fact that that coming weekend was the start of the World Cup. And it happens to be a soccer stadium that they were playing at, so.
Yeah, I mean, hey, man, I like that you did the international thing. We only get a handful of them every year, so it was good to capitalize on it. Yeah, the interesting thing about that stadium, they were talking about it's like 7,000 something feet above sea level, so it's like significantly higher than Mile High. And, man, like you saw guys winded like early on in the game. They talked a lot about guys cramping up and just, some of the different ways that they prepared to adjust for that elevation. And man, it's just, we know from Mile High that it's a factor, but now imagine going that much higher. It just had to be,
Yeah.
Pretty wild. But also, I'm sure like a really cool experience too. So,
Yeah, like last year was it? They canceled it. One of the years, the last time it was scheduled there, they canceled it because the field was like basically crap.
Okay.
It was all torn up, so they canceled it, and the NFL actually put some money into the field to make sure it was good for this go around.
Well, that's good. Yeah, you want to keep the players safe, and I know turf is a big deal. I've heard players complaining about some of the different kinds of turf out there, like the artificial turf, and it just they all have a different effect. And then we had a couple of years ago, Mexico City was the one where they were like shining that laser beam on the one quarterback, trying to like disrupt him. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh,
But
I forgot about
yeah,
that.
that was pretty wild, man. But
Yeah, it's funny. Funny you mentioned turf, and I had read there's a couple weeks ago the NFL had tracked injuries, and like over the last like 2 seasons, the number and the severity of injuries was nearly identical on on natural grass and the field turf surfaces they use.
Yeah, and so I guess maybe it's some player bias is
Hmm.
what's coming out, but it's good that the NFL's actually got some stats to track it. I tell you, man, that artificial turf, uh, it looks pretty legit. I've ran on it a number of different times, and and I know there's like different kinds, but like the NFL kind is like the highest of the quality.
Hmm.
I've been on like the shitty kind, and I've been on the good kind. And the good kind, dude, I tell you, like, from my experience, it was nice. You get a little bit of that like softness with like your knees and your hips and stuff when you're running, and like you got like the rubber simulating the dirt's kind of a little bit funky, but I don't know. I think it's pretty legit, but I'm not on it all day, every day, so I don't know.
Yeah, and like I think it was Rogers like last week or the week before, because like even Green Bay has like a stitched blended natural grass artificial turf field
Okay.
or something like that, and Rogers was saying, well, the only reason why the NFL won't do all natural grass, which is what all fields should be, is because they're too cheap.
Oh, he's just sour grapes these days because he's been getting his shit pushed in every week. So, you
Yeah,
know,
that and it came out this today, I think it was, that his thumb injury that
yeah,
is like he actually broke his thumb.
yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
So I mean, no wonder he's playing. Break your thumb on your throwing hand. No wonder he's playing like shit. Or is it just an excuse?
I think it's just an excuse, but it just seems like you break anything on your throwing hand. Uh, why is it that guys can have like a paper cut and it's all over the injury report, but like an all-pro quarterback can break his thumb on his throwing hand and no one knows about it for weeks? I think it's garbage.
Yeah,
But
well, he's been on the injury report that he hurt his thumb, not that it's broken,
oh, okay,
not to that level. Like I think it was listed as like a thumb injury or some
yeah,
shit like that.
yeah, okay. Whatever. It's Rogers, man. It's hard to get behind the guy when he acts the way he does. Well, hey, how about we move it on here? Let's do our recap of the past week. And so, James, let's look back at week 11 and, just kind of hit on some of the surprises from that slate of games. And there weren't a ton, in my opinion. I think the week before you had a lot more to talk about, but. Um, I was a little bit surprised, pleasantly surprised, to see the Lions beat down the Giants. I thought that was a solid game. Um, and there have been a lot of people talking about that game now, and just how the Lions looked really good on both sides of the ball pretty much from start to finish. In their offensive line, the way they blocked that entire game, it just goes to show they truly are a top five offensive line. I
Hmm.
mean, they're legit. And that's like what we talked about with these guys building in the trenches. That'll pay off in the long run,
Yeah,
but they got to
I'm
fill into the team a little bit yet.
I'm not gonna gloat too much because I had a pretty shitty week last week picking, but I seem to remember somebody picking that win. I think I remember it, but that's about all I picked right last week.
So let me double check that because I didn't. Oh yeah, no, you had the Lions. Perfect. I was like, okay, I wanted to make sure if you did, you got credit for it because I know sometimes you change them in the show, and
Yeah.
obviously our video evidence is a little dicey from this past week. But
Yeah, that
uh,
I changed that one on the show. I just like,
yeah,
the more I was getting into it and like how my model was playing out on it, and the more of a feeling I got with it, and I just went with it. Some of the other ones, like I was close, but it just didn't get over the edge, or like last fucking 5 second touchdowns, which shouldn't have been a fucking touchdown because there was an illegal block in the back and at right before the guy crossed the goal line. Let's not go there. That should have gone into overtime, and at a minimum probably would have ended up in the tie. But if you only have 100 yards of fucking offense, you don't deserve to win a game. And yes, I'm talking about the Jets Patriots game.
yeah, that was garbage. I told you I couldn't trust Zach Wilson after the way they shut him down in their first matchup this year. Um, and yeah, that was wild the way that it ended with that kick return and everything. But yeah, and so I guess in other surprises, James, I was surprised about Dallas beating down
Hmm.
Minnesota. I mean, I would have been totally cool, like, oh, hey, they got the win, yeah, whatever. Even though I picked Minnesota because I was trying to throw some respect for their monster record, but the way Dallas won, what was it, 40-3? I mean, it was
Hmm.
like that was like as bad of a beatdown as it can get, especially when Minnesota was so high on everybody's power rankings that mine included. And I had a couple weeks there where I was like, man, I don't know, it feels high. But then last week I was like, I'm just going to start embracing it now. And
Hmm.
of course it blows up in my face, James.
Yeah. So the funny thing, we touched on the Giants a little bit and Minnesota, but the team between them combined record is 15-5,
Yeah.
and their combined point differential is -1.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because that 40, what was that, 40-3, that put Minnesota's -2 point differential, and the Giants are +1.
Gotcha. Okay. Huh. That's interesting.
It's,
So, you know, in other surprises, I don't know, maybe Indy hanging in there and, barely losing to Philly. But, like what else stood out for you, bud?
well, that one didn't surprise me. I thought, I was starting to get the sense that Indy was going to win the game, and that, yeah, they almost did, but I mean, almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. But I outside of that, like, not really much. Yeah, not really, not much from the games really surprised me,
Okay. Well,
besides what we touched on.
yeah, and that's cool. Let's talk about some of the injuries. And so you brought up the Aaron Rodgers thing. Last week, Mike Williams got back in the lineup for the Chargers, ended up leaving that game. I want to say hamstring is.
No, Mike Williams re-aggravated his high ankle sprain.
Thank you, thank you. Keenan Allen had the hamstring, but
Yeah,
he
Keenan
he
Allen
ended
had
up
that.
playing. He had a really good game too. He had that one fumble which was kind of rough, but other than that, his production was good. He looked good. He was running crisp routes, getting his separation. Mike Williams, yeah, he came back, re-aggravated the ankle, and now he's out. But the last I heard is that he might be able to play this week, and so maybe not
Yeah.
the end of the world.
So did you see the catch that he re-aggravated his ankle on?
I did not.
Oh my gosh, it was a beauty. He re-aggravated his ankle, making sure his feet were landing in bounds. He was he,
Oh,
he was like
okay.
he was catching it, and he was kind of turning like this, and he landed on both toes in bounds, like hit both toes and then went out of
Just like a
bounds and fell
perfect
down.
toe tap.
Yeah, a perfect double toe tap.
Yeah.
And then but he kind of, you could see like right away that it didn't sit right with his ankle, and then he was done for the game.
It jacked him up.
Yeah, but it was a great catch. I'd say.
Nice, nice. All right, and so then another one, Stafford. He had that concussion in the previous week, and then in this game, left with the head injury, and he's being evaluated for the concussion, or maybe he's got a concussion now. I don't know how it played out, but you know, that's
My team sucks.
yeah.
I don't want
It,
to play.
it's
Sorry.
rough, and James, I hit you up earlier. I let you know that the
Yeah.
Rams are going to be part of our question of the week. But yeah, I mean, Cooper Cup's out. Stafford gets hurt again.
Yeah. So
Uh,
Stafford
you know,
Stafford is in the concussion protocol, and he has a neck injury, and he's been ruled out for this week's game.
okay, well that's good. That's news to me. Yeah, and I mean they should because they can't protect him. My opinion is they got to get like a fucking mobile quarterback, somebody that can at
Hmm.
least run a little bit and save his own life. But all right, well, I guess speaking of mobile quarterbacks, the next guy I got on my list is Justin Fields. He ended up having a dislocated shoulder. I'm hearing he may play this week. At least that's the last update I got, which was this morning. And I'm sure every day we get closer to the weekend, we'll find out if that changes. I believe it was his left shoulder that was dislocated, but they were saying, man, he was like visibly in a lot of pain even though he was trying to play through it in last week's game.
Yeah, so he separated his shoulder and partially torn ligaments.
Ooh.
Um, the the what concerns me about the injury, it's not that because it's his non-throwing arm, and you don't really need that much mobility in your shoulder and your non-throwing arm. The AC joint issue is what concerns me because that when you hurt your AC, so like the shoulder and then the joint here, which is like the shoulder blade and all this here, this part here
Yeah.
is the whole AC joint. And when you hurt this, that could cause other issues, like especially like with like your neck being
Oh,
right
your
there
neck
and
and your back and
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so just the shoulder wouldn't be as concerning, but since he said it's an AC joint, it's basically like an AC joint. So that's the concerning part about it. Um, it's up in the air whether he'll play. Like Eberflus kind of said, well, we'll see where it goes. But this is Eberflus's quote: "We'll see where it goes, and then when we get to tomorrow, we'll know more. And I think by Friday we'll know more. No shit." It's kind of one of those things. You work through the week, and we'll see where it is, and hopefully we're getting better and better every single day. No
So
shit.
yeah, they're just day-to-day hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure Fields he's going to want to play because he's having a good year. Not as much passing wise, but definitely running the ball. But it's he wants to be in those games, and every game that he's in, he gets better. So all right, so then another one, James, and this one not like huge news, but it looks like Chase Young, may see the field at some point here. Was activated off of IR, and so that 21-day window has opened where he's either going to get in a game or they're going to shut him down for the whole year. Uh, Maybe that's finally good news for him.
Yeah, I he probably should shut it down for the full year. They're not they're not really going. Eh, they're
I
not
don't know,
really
man.
going
They
anywhere.
they've been rallying since they put Heineke in, man.
True, but I mean, there's and in the current NFC, I mean, shit, in the current NFC, Detroit's only 2 games out of the playoffs,
Yeah.
so anything's fucking possible.
Yeah,
But
I think if he's good to go, you let him go until you're out because yeah, the NFC is pretty wide open, man.
yeah, and looking at it, that I was thinking that had their record flipped. I thought they were 5-6, not
Okay.
6-5. And at 6-5, I mean, they're a half game out of the playoffs currently. So they're in the mix, and they're still with Dallas being 7-3. They're still in the mix for. I'm sorry, I forgot about Philly. I
Oh yeah,
shouldn't have done that.
that's okay.
But I mean, they're still in the mix. I mean, mathematically, they're still in the mix for the division too. So I could see that. I think I really think they should shut him down and get him healthy because he's going to be like kind of like the core of that team going forward, and you want to get him healthy and you have the building blocks for a better season next year, and just kind of let him get 100% healthy.
Well, I guess let me just ask you, and I know I'm going on a tangent now, but do you think there's going to be pressure on Ron Rivera if they shut him down and they don't make the playoffs because you now got a number of years with him being there, moving around quarterbacks, shaking things up. And I know that one year, they got in the playoffs, they played the Bucks or whatever in the first round or whatever, but
They
uh,
almost won that game too with Heineke. That was like
yeah,
what, 2 years ago?
yeah. But do you think that the fan base and or ownership is going to start eating this guy alive if things don't progress because it's really not gotten better.
So it's funny you say that about the fan base. Since Snyder has owned the team, like I mean, back in the '90s before Snyder bought the team, you had a great fan base there. Now that fan base is completely apathetic, and I don't think they really care as much, and they won't. I don't think it really matters. I think what the decision has to be made on what's best for the player, the health of the player, not what's best for the team, not what's best for the coach.
Oh yeah.
And I think Rivera has to be a professional and say, I'm doing what's best for the player, which is my job. And if you fire me because we don't make the playoffs. You fire me because we don't make the playoffs. I think he has to go that route instead of trying to, oh well, I'm going to play him. We're gonna suit him up because he's quote unquote ready, and because I might lose my job. I think you got to do what's best for the player.
Yeah. No, and I'm just saying if he's medically cleared, well, then you get into the doing what's best for the team because he should be capable of playing. But I know what you're saying. Yeah, you don't want the guy to like re-injure himself and have a problem longer term because like
Mhm.
you said, I mean, they invested a very high draft pick in him for a reason, So okay, so next up here, James, I got Kyle Pitts. It looks like he may have torn his MCL. If that's the case, he'll be out for the year. The last thing I read is that he was undergoing tests, but that it was highly likely that that's what it was. They just hadn't 100% confirmed it. The last
So
article I read.
so last I heard is they put him on season-ending IR.
Okay, so yeah, then
So
maybe they got it. Yeah.
yeah, and I thought I had, and I might be conflating different players, but I thought I had read he needed some sort of surgery.
Okay.
But I'm probably um, confusing players.
I gotcha. Well, do a little bit of digging. Check it out. While you're digging, I will say the last one I had was in a lot of injuries this week, man. Wandale Robinson, the wide receiver for the Giants, man, he was having a phenomenal game against Detroit. Tore his ACL. He is out for the year. That's a tough one for them. They're already down Sterling Shepard. They
Hmm.
traded Tony to the Chiefs. That trade's working great for Kansas City. And then, Galladay has been basically non existent for them. He did a little bit against Detroit, but nothing else all year. And so, Wandale Robinson going down, that's a big loss for them.
Yeah. So it wasn't season-ending IR. It's still believed to be an MCL issue. ESPN's reported that he's going to need surgery to repair it. By placing him on IR, the earliest he could come back is week 17.
Okay.
So that's where I think I was kind of reading between the lines because, I mean, you're Kyle Pitts. He's like this is another player. You invested a high draft pick for him. He is going to be he's the next Gonzalez or the next Kittle
If they can
or the
find a
next
quarterback to
Kelsey.
utilize him,
Yeah,
he's been very quiet because they're just not getting him the targets.
yeah, and I think he's the future Julio of this franchise, and especially with trading away the wide receivers, like this is like he's going to be part of that core of your franchise. You just shut him down, make sure he's healthy, don't rush him back.
Yeah, I got
I
you.
know I have unpopular opinions probably with
No,
half
no,
the people
no.
out there.
No, hey, I don't want to see a guy get hurt any more than they already are. I just think it's an interesting dynamic with both of these teams because Atlanta hypothetically is still in the mix too.
Yeah,
And so
Atlanta's half game out of the division, and I believe I think they're just just behind. Yeah, so they're just behind the Commanders,
okay,
right at like between the Commanders and the Lions, and for the playoffs.
gotcha. So all right, that's all I had injury wise for the big stuff. There's always a lot of other guys getting hurt and things like that. Those were the big names that I saw. Anything that you think I missed there, James?
Injury wise, no, that
Okay.
was it. There were a couple quarterback benchings this week.
All right. Well, yeah. Why don't you give me those, and then I'm going to give you some of the other news I picked up.
So there were three.
Oh shit! I didn't get three. Yeah, definitely. Tell me.
The Texans are benching Davis Mills
Yeah.
and starting Kyle Allen. The Jets are starting, what's his name? Mike Smith, Mike White
Okay.
over Zach Wilson. And the Panthers have benched Baker and are starting Darnold. And the fourth is kind of Wentz is back and Washington is going to continue to play Heineke. And the interesting thing about that decision is it's beneficial for the team based on the trade for Wentz.
Oh, he had some like playing time incentives
If he
that were like
played,
made the pick conditional.
yeah, so if he had to play 70% or more of the team's offensive snaps
Okay.
in the regular season, and it would go from like a third to a second round pick. Based on what he's missed so far, and this game coming this week, that is about equal. That would be equal to about 30% of the games played by Washington this year, which should get them below that 70% threshold to not have the escalator.
I gotcha. Well, I guess that kind of a good thing for them. All right. Well, let me give you a few things that I picked up on, and the first one is just poor Brownie the Elf, James. I'm not sure if he's still on the field for the Cleveland Browns, but I heard somebody broke into the stadium and gave him a lawn job. And so I don't know how that happens, how you could break into an NFL stadium in this day and age, but I'm sure there were a shitload of cameras, and the police are probably going to be getting that guy pretty soon if they haven't already.
I didn't hear that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, and so they're saying, they believe they'll have it up to par by Sunday. But yeah, it was pretty wild, man. I hit up our buddy in Cleveland. You know who he is. I won't say his name, but I was just like, dude, what'd you do? I don't think it was him. All right. So, in other news, James, Melvin Gordon, he was released by the Broncos. He had another costly turnover for them. Kind of contributed to their loss this past week, to be honest. And that's kind of par for the course for him for this year. Mm-hmm. In week one even, he had like at least one fumble like at the goal line. I mean, it was like just not good. But it also
week one it was him. Like he had a fumble in the 2, and then the other guy,
Javonte Williams.
Javonte Williams had a fumble in the same spot like the next series or the next time they were there.
Yeah. Yeah, and so with this one, it just kind of adds insult to injury because Latavius Murray, who I think is like 32. I mean, that's like grandpa in running back years. He's been outplaying Melvin Gordon, and so Gordon kind of had the golden opportunity when Williams went down to sort of like reassert himself as a running back one in the league, and it's just been a disaster. But I'm not going to put it all on him. The fumbles, that's on him. But that offense has just been inept all year. And so I would like to propose that Denver trade Hackett to Green Bay so he can be their offensive coordinator again and maybe figure them out. And then Sean Payton can come in and take over the Broncos because, they're wasting a lot of talent on that offensive side of the ball, man.
I just have to ask, how the fuck does Hackett still have a job?
He should not. I think it's, John Elway trying to save face, like, maybe he'll start winning and I'll look like maybe a little better. But no, if Elway was smart, I think he'd be like Steve Wilkes.
It's not even Elway's decision anymore.
Oh, yeah, they made some changes.
What's his name? George Payton?
Yeah, I would just be like Steve Wilkes is with the Panthers' decisions. Just every week, I'm striking people out. Oh, you sucked, you're gone. Boom, 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 boom. Shit. Look how far we are in the year, man. Denver, it's a disaster. Pull the plug, get a jump start on next year because you still got a lot of these guys under contract. Don't waste that window. So that's all I'm saying.
So it's interesting. Like I'd read an article. I keep coming across cross articles because they're always talking about who's on the hot seat, and it's like he was not mentioned anywhere.
Which is stupid, but it's just because he's a first-year head coach. I don't know. I don't care if you're in your first year. When you come in to a team that's like locked and loaded, ready to go, and just gets a quarterback, you got to have immediate results, man.
Yeah, and it's like so like when I go through it, it's like the last article I read, it was like Staley and um if Staley was on the hot seat, I've Vrabel on the hot seat. I don't know how the fuck that happens.
Yeah, Vrabel should never be on the hot seat.
Like Lovie Smith and Dennis Allen, but there was no mention.
Yeah.
No mention about Hackett being on the hot seat. It's like what the is it because of like the like shitty ass contract they gave him to tempt him over? The only reason they hired him in the first place was try to tempt Rodgers to want to come to Denver. It didn't work.
I'll say this. Dennis Allen, I agree with. There's way too much talent in New Orleans for them to be doing that bad. Lovie Smith in Houston, that's tough because that team, he inherited such a mess. And yeah, it's bad because they only got one win. But I don't know. It's like I would be fine giving him more time because you got to have the players too,
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if they got rid of Lovie Smith. And I told you this when they hired him. The only reason Lovie Smith got the job is because of the fact that there was, and I'm not saying anything about this. There was a whole kerfuffle over hiring minority coaches and this and that.
Talking about the Rooney Rule?
No, not the Rooney Rule, but there was a whole kerfuffle over how like what's his face and Byron Leftwich didn't get the Jacksonville job, and so didn't get this job, and and like there was like 8 coaching vacancies over the offseason, and at that point none of them, because everything I was reading up until they hired Lovie Smith wasn't even on like the top 5 that were being listed as potential Texans coaches. The number 1 was Kellen Moore.
Yeah, I think you could have made the case for him. I think you could have made the case for Leftwich. I think there were a lot of up-and-coming guys. Bieniemy in Kansas City, you could have looked at him. If you wanted to go offensive, if you wanted to go defensive, I'm sure there were a couple of guys there too, but,
Yeah, but the entire, like the list, every list I saw had like a 99% chance that it was Kellen Moore going to be the next head coach of the Texans. And then all of a sudden Lovie Smith, who wasn't even mentioned in the running, gets the job. And it was only because of the optics of it.
Gotcha. All right, well, that sucks. But let me just wrap up these last couple pieces on the news here, James. Darrell Henderson, another running back released by the Rams.
Claimed by the Jags.
Oh, all right, thank you. Yeah, I didn't see that yet, but that's good for him. So he was on the team for 3 years, was basically their running back to Cam Akers, almost got traded earlier in the year. They kind of made amends with him. I'm really not like all that sure why they got rid of Henderson because Akers hasn't exactly been lighting the world on fire. But, I don't think you can expect much out of them with that shaky offensive line anyhow. And then I did see they also cut linebacker Justin Hollins, so maybe the team's just trying to shake things up because they're just sucking ass, and so it is what it is. And then James, I guess I want to touch on something with Travis Kelce, and then I'm going to hand one over to you because I don't have all the details on it. But Kelce, I saw, had his 33rd 100-yard performance. Mm-hmm. Fucking 3 touchdowns on top of that. But the 33rd 100-yard performance sets a new tight end record. The dude's a beast, man. And, I had a note for the power rankings, but I'll kind of hit on it now, is, a year ago when they signed him to that extension, there were people out there speculating that he was starting to lose a step and that they thought that was a bad contract that the Chiefs signed with him. he has like proven by far and away all of those guys wrong. I mean, this guy has been lights out, man. And awesome. I mean, awesome. So that's good. But then, James, the one I need a little bit of help here, the assist, if you will, is the Arizona assistant coach, Sean Kugler. He was fired, I guess, like before the game on Monday night. And so I don't really have all the details, but you were kind of like shedding some light on it for me before the show. Why don't you tell me what happened there, man?
So apparently Sunday night he went out in Mexico City and it's being listed as groped a woman while he was out, and which was reported to the Mexican authorities. Mexican authorities notified the Cardinals of it happening, and the Cardinals instantly fired him and put him on a flight back to Arizona. Apparently, this is the weird thing is this is the second Cardinals assistant coach this year to be accused of some kind of groping incident. The other one was the running backs coach, and like he was on the team, or he was on the coaching staff. He was like in February. He like broke into a woman's house and assaulted her.
Oh my gosh!
And I don't know the full details about it, but it was like, I guess it wasn't as bad as the article made, because he was like given a year. He was found guilty and given a year in jail, which was deferred for a year probation, and he quit or resigned from the Cardinals. But it's kind of weird coincidence that two coaches on Arizona have been accused of groping women.
Yeah, I don't know, and then it just obviously reminds me of like the Deshaun Watson stuff, and it's just it's just not good,
Yeah, it's not good at all.
These guys need to be better role models for the positions they're in. They're obviously, in front of the camera a lot, and if they're not, like, even an assistant coach like this, maybe not like front and center in front of the camera, but a big part of like a public thing with an NFL team. And so you gotta be way more respectful, man, and you just can't do that, period. Doesn't matter if you're behind the scenes and nobody sees you. You just you can't do that shit, period. It's just that when you're in one of these positions, you're privileged, and you need to be a better role model and example for other people to follow.
Yeah, exactly. And I just caught a glimpse of it and something, and I remembered one injury you missed was Edwards-Helaire was put on IR.
Oh man, totally missed my radar. What happened to him, man?
I don't remember. I just happened to see it, and it's like Chiefs, and I remember seeing the article that Edwards-Helaire was put on IR. I think it was like an ankle sprain.
Okay.
Yeah, high ankle sprain, and he was put on IR this week. So, okay. I mean, they have a lot of injuries.
Yeah, and I know they got Isaiah Pacheco, however you say his name, the rookie running back. He won that job anyhow and was looking really good. And then they still got McKinnon on that roster, and so I'm sure they'll be in good shape. But I know Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he was trying to like claw back in and get that running back one job. And it's actually, from the team standpoint, that's a good spot to be in, because you got a guy fighting hard to get it back, which means you're getting everything you can out of him. And so bummer that they lose him. Hopefully they get him back, because they're obviously going to be making a playoff run. So
I don't. The article I saw here that reminded me of it didn't really specify seriousness, or if it was going to be for return or what. But high
ankles usually, I don't know, like 4 to 6 weeks or something. It's a little bit of time. All right, so anything else on the news front there, James?
No,
I know we covered a lot, man.
Yeah, I think that was it. It just, as I was looking back at the article for up on the coach, Arizona coach, I caught a glimpse of it's just like Chiefs running back on IR, and I was like, oh shit, we forgot about that.
All right, hey, good catch, good catch. Okay, well, let's move it over and let's do our Week 12 power rankings. And so, James, when you're ready, man, why don't you give me your 1 through 5?
Sure, just give me a second. Let me get to the right tab. All right. So at number one, I have Kansas City. I had them at number one last week. They stayed there. They won. Yeah, it was a closer game than probably people would have liked. But I mean, the Chargers are really talented. They just have to put it all together. And so, but I left Kansas City at one. San Francisco moved up 2 spots to number two. I
Nice.
really, I really struggled with number three. Um, and I put I left Baltimore at number three, but I wanted to even though they barely beat Indy, and that's kind of what made me leave Baltimore at three. I really think Philadelphia is number three, but because they struggled a little bit with Indy, I only put them up 1 spot to number four. Um, and then Cincinnati is number five. I moved them up 2 spots. With Cincinnati, you can make the argument that, well, it was a close game against Pittsburgh, and you didn't move Philly up as much because they had a close game against Indy, but Pittsburgh's a divisional team,
Yep.
and those matchups are super hard to win. So I have to give them the respect for winning that matchup. It looks like Pittsburgh hits. I'll get into it a little bit more later, but I've been mentioning over the last
Yeah.
couple of weeks they're getting it more and more together.
I'm with
And
you on that, man. Yeah.
so, but that's my top five. Rounded
Yeah.
out with Cincinnati.
Yeah, and more to come later on Pittsburgh because I got probably some similar notes to you. All right, yeah. So for me, at one, I kept Kansas City there. You know, they're just kicking ass, and so they deserve to be there. At two, I got Philly. I kept them where they were at. It was it was strange to see them in that game because they were very sluggish on offense, and Indy's defense has not exactly been dominant this year. But either way, they got the win. They still got the best record in the NFL at 9-1, so I'm good keeping them at number two. At three, I got Buffalo. I moved them up 1 spot, and I was hoping to see a stronger beatdown against Cleveland, but it was still important that they got the win and they got back on track. Um, I think the thing is with with Buffalo is that ultimately they still have one of the best, well-rounded rosters in the NFL and one of the better coaches. And so, even though they've had a little bit of shaky play in recent weeks, I think they're going to be okay, especially when the playoffs come. At four, I've got Dallas. They were my biggest move on the board. I moved them up 6 spots, maybe a bit aggressive, but I mean, they just like asserted some serious dominance over the Vikings, who I had in my top five. And so I wanted to throw them some respect. Like we talk about their offense, maybe, they got some things to improve with the way they've been using Dak and whatever. But, obviously Pollard lit it up, and the defense has just continued to be lights out. And that's really what excites me is that defense. And then at five, I got Baltimore. I kept them at where they were at. I almost dropped them, kind of like what you're saying. I don't like how they kept it that close with Carolina. There have been some people calling out Baltimore's offense in recent weeks. And, ultimately I kept them where they were at, and that was fine. I am going to say this before I give it back to you, James. From here on out, my board is messed up in a major way, buddy. Like this past week, I don't know what it was. The combination of wins and how it affected my board was majorly dysfunctional. Like my brain could not compute. And so I'm hoping this week, after this slate of games, it helps me feel a little bit better about meshing it back together. But I'm just letting you know there's going to be some weirdness from here on out. So back to you at six, man.
And I too have some weirdness from here on out, and there's places with the wins and losses and stuff where teams like kind of naturally fell based on that, and it's like this team is not that good.
Exactly.
And so we will get to that. It's more starting at 11
Okay.
for me,
Yeah.
but I know exactly what you mean. So at 6, I have Miami. Miami didn't play. They stayed the same. 7, I had Buffalo. And I only moved them up one spot because, yeah, it was a closer game. But you kind of got to give respect to them because they only practiced like 3 or 4 days last week. They had or like 2 or 3 days or 4 days of practice. Didn't have that extra day of practice and did a walkthrough. They had to figure out how to fly out of Buffalo. I mean, shit, their fucking neighbors were digging them out of their driveways and shit so they could get to a vehicle to get to the airport.
Dude, they said they said at one part of the city the snow was measured in at like 6'6" or 6 foot something. Like they said it was the exact height of Josh Allen. It's like, oh my God, that's a lot of snow.
Yeah, and there's like one player that said that he had to like walk through the snow like a quarter or a half mile just to get somewhere where he could get in the vehicle to get to the so I kind of
some adversity.
There's a lot of adversity, but it was still a close game. I respect that they won. I think if it was a bigger blowout, a bigger win, I might have moved them up a little bit, but they ended up at 7, up one spot. I only moved Dallas up one spot. I know they beat Minnesota, who I had at like number 2 last week, and I think I just got like way too much into Minnesota. Yeah. But also, I want to see it a little bit more consistently happening. They beat Minnesota. Yeah, it was a beatdown.
But they lost to Green Bay.
Surprise beatdown, but just the week before they lost to Green Bay, and I want to see more consistency before I move them up much more.
I gotcha.
At number 9, I have Tennessee. I mean, they dominated the game against Green Bay. Green Bay never was really in the game. Yeah, it was Green Bay. I moved them up one spot, and this is where I struggled with 8, 9, and 10 because I knew Minnesota was going to stay on my top 10 because their record deserves it.
Yep.
But they got beat down by Dallas, so it was like, where am I gonna put them, and try to figure out where to put them.
Another primetime game loss for Kirk Cousins too.
It wasn't a primetime game.
What?
It was a 4 p.m. game.
Okay, so yeah, the article I was reading was talking about another primetime loss for Cousins, but I'm glad you clarified that because I was just like, damn, dude, this guy can't win in primetime. But you're right.
He has a primetime game coming up this week, which we'll get to that in the picks. but yeah, so I dropped Minnesota, ended up dropping them 8 spots. I couldn't drop them much more because they're fucking 8-2.
Yeah.
Like,
you got to respect the record.
You got to respect the record. And previewing you a little bit, I think I feel more comfortable leaving them where it ended up where I did because I did this independently before I even looked at yours.
Sure.
And which it amazes me how sometimes we come up with different numbers for drops and rises, and teams end up
in the same spot. Yeah.
In the same spot a lot. But yeah. So back to you for your 6 through 10.
Yeah, and so 6, like you mentioned, Miami, I got them there too. And they didn't play, so I didn't move them. This is where it starts to get a little weird on my board. These next 3 teams, they all got to win, but they basically were gridlocked on my board because everybody above them was kind of like set in stone already with the moves I made. And so the Bengals, they got the win. You covered it pretty well, I think. Tennessee, same thing, got the win over Green Bay. And the 49ers got the win over Arizona. Out of those teams, I really wanted to bump up San Francisco. I liked Garoppolo, the 4 touchdowns. Hey, that's great. We've known he's capable of having those games. But like the thing I really liked was Kittle dominating. We've not been seeing that as much in recent times, and that was pretty cool. Obviously, McCaffrey's been all the rage for them. But I think that the momentum's building and their trajectory is in the right way. I just didn't really have a place to put them without like really messing up my board even more. And so I'm hoping this next week I'll have an in to give them a good bump because they
Yeah.
definitely deserve it.
And I put San Francisco at number 2 because when I sat down and looked at it, I felt that number 1 and number 2 should be who I think have the best chance of representing their conference in the Super Bowl. And when I sat down and looked at it, I think San Francisco has the best shot at um, at winning the NFC. I think Philadelphia is number 2. I think Dallas is number 3, and that's kind of
Yeah.
how my rankings are playing out for the NFC and AFC. You know who I think has first, second, third, etc. shot, and then kind of mixing it up to see, okay, well, this team's better than this team. This team's better than this team. Um, I I was ready to put Minnesota last week into it, and I'm sorry to cut you off. I was
No, you're
ready to
fine. You're fine.
ready to put Minnesota into that list in the NFC of the, like, they have a chance at representing the NFC in the Super Bowl, and then they go out and lay an egg. And
Yeah.
so I'm not ready to say that they have a chance. I'd say out of the teams in the NFC, they probably have the fourth best chance, but I don't think it's nominal, if anything.
I gotcha. No, I like your explanation there. And, like my last thought on the 49ers was just that I did try to take into consideration that Kyler Murray was out again. And, I think that was like maybe the sort of like that final factor in why I didn't force a move up my board because I thought,
But I'm going to push back on that because everything going into the game, every analyst that is it Colt McCoy?
yeah,
Colt McCoy starting and Kyler Murray being out gave Arizona a better chance at winning the game than with Kyler Murray there.
I don't know if I buy that, but or like I guess what I'm saying is, it's a backup quarterback's a backup quarterback. That's all I'm
Yeah.
saying.
I know.
It's like I had to take it with a grain of salt. But then, all right, at 10 I got Minnesota. I dropped them down 7. That was an embarrassing loss, but yeah, I'm still trying to respect the record. But yeah, 7's obviously a brutal drop on the board. And I think that they've gotten better as the years gone on, getting used to O'Connell's playbook, and starting to come together. But this was just such a bad loss, and so they'll be okay, I think. But time will tell. So back to you at 11, man.
All right, and this is kind of where my board gets a little wonky with 11. I have the Patriots. They moved up 4 spots, and basically the 4 teams that I had directly in front of them all lost, including I had the Jets in front of them. The Jets lost. I had the Giants in front of them. They lost. I had the Chargers in front of them. They lost.
So you let them rise up. I got you.
I had Cleveland in front of them. They lost. So it's like there's nothing I can do. I have to reset this area somehow. I kind of like what you did better than what I did, and a little bit, but we'll let you.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At number 12, I have the Chargers. Just so New England went up 4 spots. Chargers, they stayed the same. They lost. I didn't want to kill them because they lost to my top team. They held it close against my top team, and I think they have the talent. I think there's some coaching issues there that's holding the team back more,
Okay.
and so I couldn't really put them up much more than I couldn't I couldn't.
I know what you mean.
I couldn't raise them or put them much above 12 because of the fact that I think the coach is holding it back. 13, I have the Giants. I moved the Giants back 2 spots. Based on what happened around here on the board, I couldn't really move the Giants much more down because a lot of teams lost in here or were on a bye. So they kind of ended up falling at 13 after the loss to Detroit.
Well, it's kind of like Minnesota, where you're respecting the record a bit too, even though
Yeah.
they lost.
Yeah, and it's the same with the Jets, who I have at 14. I only dropped them one spot. It's more of a respecting the record, even though they've looked atrocious the last couple weeks. But it is New England, and um, who was it that's I forget who it was that said that if it rains 29 days straight, then on the 30th day you're going to leave the house with an umbrella. Um, the Jets have now lost 14 straight games to New England, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I should have expected it. New England, New England's made some offenses look atrocious this year,
Yeah.
but their offense is not doing much. And the Jets defense did a good job against New England's offense, but their offense didn't play for. I don't know what to do with the Jets. I'm
Yeah.
still respecting the record a little bit. I think they're especially with them benching Wilson. I think they're like 3 years out of being a real contender now, because they're going to have to figure out their quarterback, because their quarterback and next year quarterback is not on the roster.
I
And
gotcha.
by betching Wilson, an analyst I respect, said it best. If you think he's salvageable, you let him play. If you don't think he's salvageable, which he's not salvageable, you bench his ass.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some good games out of him, but we've also seen some just total disasters. And I think that's the problem, is we're seeing so many more of like those low lows than we're seeing him get to those highs. And
Uh-huh.
so it's just
And
not good, man.
so one thing I had read about, I had seen, and I didn't read the article, but basically, um, that he lost the locker room,
Okay, I can see that.
especially with his apathetic apathetic press conference, where he was asked directly if he felt like the offense let the defense down. He said, "No, you don't know what's going on here."
Oh,
I was like, whatever. But I had seen that he had completely lost the locker room,
okay.
and that's bad. Um. Anyways, uh,
15?
15. I have Cleveland. I only dropped them one spot because they kept it close. Yeah, maybe the keeping it close was more of the adversity for Buffalo than Cleveland actually keeping it close, but they kept it close. So I got to respect that. And another injury that we forgot about is Mixon's in concussion protocol.
Oh, yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah, there was just a ton of stuff this past
Yeah,
week. I don't even know what to say, man. Okay, so for me, James, at 11, I moved the Chargers up 4 spots. And this
and
was,
I like that better than what I did. That's what I was alluding to.
well, thank you. This was one of several just like forced adjustments on my board. And so these guys were like maybe the easiest one to explain, which is that uh, even though they lost, it was to my top team, your top team also, that kept it really darn close. And the big reason for the adjustment is that they're getting healthy, and we've known all the way from the start of the year that if they stayed healthy, this is like a scary team, and it showed in that game against Kansas City. And so I had to make that adjustment on my board just to try to find some kind of harmony. At 12 and 13, I've got Tampa Bay and Seattle. They didn't play, they didn't move. At 14, I've got the Giants. I dropped them down 3 spots. Plenty of reasons why I probably could have went lower, but respecting the record, so I'm holding them here. 15, I've got Washington, and I'm starting to, watch these guys creep up on my board. And James, you might remember earlier in the year, my model had them way high,
Hmm.
and as the first couple weeks played out, they just got smoked down the board. They're now getting back up there, which is making me wonder, is it getting too high again? Because I've already been burned by these guys once. But you know, I only moved them up 1 spot, not crazy, because they beat the worst team on my board. So it's, wasn't a huge move necessarily this week. I'm just keeping an eye on them. Back to you at 16, man.
All right, 16. I have Seattle. They didn't play. no move. Washington, I moved them up one spot. Yeah, they beat Houston. You can make the argument that they didn't really deserve a bump. I mean, they're already higher on my board than where I had them at the start of the season. But like I said earlier, they're what? They're 6-5, 5-6, 6-5. 6-5.
They are, yeah, they're 6-5. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, you kind of got to respect that. They're a completely different team with Heineke at quarterback than with Wentz at quarterback.
Yeah.
Like I went over it last week. It's like a 3 points per game difference with the two quarterbacks, and all but one of their losses, 4 of the 5 losses, are with Wentz at quarterback. 18, I have New Orleans. They moved up one spot after beating the Rams. The Rams are pathetic. New Orleans snuck it out against the Rams. New Orleans is pathetic too, but it's also I moved a team, and that is also a little bit why New Orleans got a bump, along with Atlanta. Atlanta got a 1 spot bump after beating Chicago. It was a close game. I think even later we'll get to it, but I think even after that game, I give Chicago a bump because of what went on around the board. At 20, I have Arizona. I dropped them 3 spots. Yeah, Arizona is.
Yeah,
Arizona
they gotta stay healthy, and yeah, and I don't know.
There's a reason why they initially put the 4-hour homework clause in Kyler's contract. There's a reason why Cliff Kingsbury never stays around.
Yeah.
And there's reasons for these things. You just got to see the light, and the team will be better. First of all, glad they didn't give the guaranteed contract, even though there's a collusion case about it for the NFLPA saying that it's collusion. You're not giving these high profile quarterbacks fully guaranteed contracts. No, we have to protect our ass, especially with like one of the guys cited was Kyler Murray. Look at what the fuck is Kyler. I digress. I'll move it on to you with 16 through 20.
Okay. Yeah, we can come back to that though, because I'm in with talking about that. But yeah, so at 16, James, I've got the Falcons. I moved them up 3 spots, and so this was another part of my board here where I was kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, and I just had to adjust some things when I look at the teams around them. And, I kind of like try to evaluate the different elements on the various teams. They're the one that gives me maybe the most warm and fuzzy out of some of the guys in this range. And so that's why I put them here. And by the way, that was a sweet Cordero Patterson return touchdown. Also, now another record. I mentioned Kelsey's earlier, but he's now set the NFL record for most return touchdowns in a career. So good for him. At 17, I've got the Packers, and I wanted to drop them. The board kind of worked in their favor. I kept them put. I think it's like one of these hypotheticals where it's like if they played the Patriots, I think they could beat them. If they played the Jets, it's like I think they could beat them.
They couldn't beat the fucking Lions. How could they beat the Jets? How could they beat the Patriots?
I just don't. I don't think the Patriots can score, and I don't think that the Jets have a reliable quarterback. And so it's just that's what I'm looking at, James. This is where my board is so messed up this week. A lot of these teams, I'm looking at them and I'm like, how are these NFL teams? It just is. It's messed up, dude, and it's effing with my head. So either way, I got them at 17. I got the Patriots at 18. I moved them up 2 spots. They beat the Jets. I wanted them above the Jets on my board. I got the Jets at 19. I dropped them down 5 spots. That 5-spot drop sucked because I respect Saleh. I respect that defense. But offensively, without Breece Hall and, with Zach Wilson being who he is and nobody else at quarterback, I just can't trust him. And so I had to smoke him.
With Breece Hall and Elijah Vera Tucker there, they are a playoff team despite the quarterback.
Correct. And so next year when those guys are back, I'll feel a lot better about them.
Mm-hmm.
But by then, hopefully, they'll have an answer at quarterback too. At 20, I've got the Cardinals, and so I moved them up 2 spots, even though they got a win. This was another one of these just pure adjustments on my board. It's like I'm looking at a lot of teams with dysfunction, in my opinion, and I just had to stop and pause and say, you know what? I think they're better than some of these guys lower on my board, even though they lost. I just got to force an adjustment here, and I'm hoping that after this next week, some of this stuff will come back into harmony. And
Yeah,
so,
and this is another example where took you raised them 2 spots, I lowered them 3 spots, and they ended up the same.
yeah, we're having some convergence. That's a good thing. Back to you, 21, man.
Okay. 21 through 25, there was no adjustment on my board.
Okay.
Yeah, Houston lost to Washington, but Jacksonville was on a bye. I have Houston at 21. They lost to Washington, but Jacksonville was on a bye, so I wasn't going to move Jacksonville. So that's who was at 22. Below Jacksonville, 23. Pittsburgh had a loss, so I'm not going to move Houston below Pittsburgh because they both lost, and I think they're comparable. I don't think Pittsburgh's better than Jacksonville, so it's just, and then Carolina lost to Baltimore. I couldn't really move them, and Tampa Bay, because Tampa Bay at 25 were on a bye.
Yeah,
It's like
quandary.
my only option here, and we'll get to it a little bit more, is to put some teams I have like lower, like way fucking higher on the board, and I'm not ready to do that yet.
Yep. I know. Hey, I feel your pain, dude. And I was just talking like a week or two ago about, this time of the year, you kind of know who these teams are. You don't have to move them as much. And now I'm like, I don't know. Maybe we don't know who these teams are, or maybe they're all that messed up. And so it's weird, man. But that's why we do it every week. And so at 21, James, I've got the fucking Detroit Lions, buddy. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I know that this is a wild move. I moved them up 7 spots. 3 wins in a row. I'm going to embrace this team. I'm hearing a lot of people start showing support that haven't done it before. And, I know all the arguments why not to do it. I've made all the arguments for many, many years on why not to do it. But I'm going to jump on the bandwagon. And, I'm not expecting a win this week against Buffalo. But I think that maybe this team is turning the corner in the Dan Campbell era. And I'm going to go back to this Giants game just real quick and say, early on in that game, we had like a 4th and 2 or whatever it was. And what did we do? We kicked that fucking field goal on the road. And I'm telling you, that's the kind of shit that's going to help this team. They were way too aggressive with that earlier on in the year, and it burned them. Now they're playing smarter football, and they're giving their team a chance. And so I dug that big time.
So you have them at 21, and you say you're drinking the Kool-Aid. You're a little bit higher, but not that much higher than the most recent ESPN power rankings for the Lions, who had them at 23.
Oh, well, that makes me feel a lot better. But, it's also probably some of those guys that wrote that article. I probably heard them on TV or on the radio, which is why it helped inflate my decision to do this. But still, makes me feel better. Thanks for saying that. At 22, I've got the Bears. I dropped them down 1 spot. I think they played a really hard-fought game against Atlanta. Ultimately, they didn't get it, but I didn't want to dog them too much on my board, so I just dropped them 1 spot. 23, I've got Indianapolis. Even though they lost, I didn't move them. I'm still trying to figure out who they are now with Jeff Saturday and company. And they kept it real close against one of my top teams. And so I'm going to give them another week before I figure out where their move is. I think it's like they're in a week-to-week mode where one of these weeks something's going to happen, and I'm going to feel like I see a reason to either move them up like 3-4 spots or drop them down like 3-4 spots. I don't see a whole lot of like one move here or there. It's going to be like a bigger thing because now you got like a new regime there. And at 24, I've got the Rams. Long overdue and probably not even a strong enough drop, but I moved them down 6 spots. I can see them progressively going down from here. We talked about it, Cooper Kupp out, Stafford, you mentioned he's ruled out for this week. I think they're in trouble. I think they're going to
Mhm.
keep dropping, and we'll talk more about them later. And then at 25, I've got the Saints. I moved them up 4 spots, which is a combination of their record being better than the teams around them on my board, as well as a little bit of that, like, what have you done for me lately mentality. They got a win here this past week where a lot of these other teams in this range on my board lost. And so that kind of like helped facilitate maybe a little bigger bump than what I would have normally given them. Back to you, 26, homie.
All right, so at 26, I have the Lions. I'm holding off on getting too excited about them. I just keep holding off on getting too excited about them, but the last, like, was it the 3 wins in a row? They're 4-6. They're not last place. I'm trying not to get excited about them. So this is me tempering my excitement, only moving them up 1 spot.
So you're doing what I normally do.
Mm-hmm. Because I do what you normally. I normally do what you're doing. So we're kind of flipped here.
Oh man, yeah.
27. I have the Colts. I moved them up 1 spot. I like what I see with this team with Saturday. I like what I see. I think the team's playing better. I don't know if they can beat many of the teams that I have above them. I think some of them they can, some of them they can't. But I want to see more.
Sure.
I want to see more from them. This is an interesting one. I decided we get to it. Even though Justin Fields got hurt, Chicago lost to Atlanta. It was a hard-fought game. I thought Chicago played really well in the game. Yeah, Fields got hurt, and it might hinder him in the future. But I moved Chicago up 1 spot to 28 this week simply because I liked how they looked in that game.
Yeah.
29, I have Vegas. And they got moved up 3 spots. Part of this is because they just beat Denver, and when I got my final rankings, like, oh, Denver and Vegas are like 1 or 2 spots away. So I just put Denver at 30, dropped them 4 spots behind Vegas because of the fact that Vegas just beat them. Even though I have no confidence in that team, but I also don't think Vegas is worse than the teams that I have behind them.
Yeah. They have a lot of talent, man. They're just not doing it. Oop.
Yeah.
All right, kicking it back to me. Okay, so at 26, James, I've got the Cleveland Browns. I dropped them 2 spots. I know they lost to Buffalo. They kept it close. And so 2 spots, maybe there's a little bit of me just emotionally dogging these guys. But the bottom line, I've been saying it for a long time. They're grossly underperforming their talent level. I think Watson should be able to get him back on track, and they'll start climbing up my board. But until then, I'm just going to keep dropping them because this is just really disappointing for me. At 27, I've got Pittsburgh. I dropped them down 2 spots. I think they played pretty well against Cincinnati. Watt looked good. Pickett looked really good up until the end. And I think you can see, like you've been talking about, there's reasons for hope with Pittsburgh. And so, I like what I'm seeing. I want to see Pittsburgh do good. They've always been one of my favorite teams. At 28, I've got Carolina. I dropped them down 1 spot. And this was tough. They played really good against Baltimore, but their running game was non-existent. And I kind of talked about it last week, where with Baltimore getting Roquan Smith before the trade deadline, that could maybe shut down Donta Foreman. It absolutely did in this game. But it's okay. I wasn't expecting him to win anyhow, so I just dropped him down 1. At 29, I got the Raiders. I moved them up 2 spots, James. I got them out of the dumpster fire, at least for a week. I almost wanted to move them higher because we know how talented the roster is. Mm-hmm. They just aren't getting the wins, and so I didn't want to get ahead of myself. Then at 30, I got Jacksonville. They didn't play, so I didn't move them. And back to you, my friend, for the dumpster fire.
So I struggled with what order to put my dumpster fire in, because both these teams are really dysfunctional right now, and they may not have the worst records in the league, but I think playing wise, the teams with the worst records are playing better than these two teams. So I ended up settling on the Rams dropping one spot because I had the Rams at 30 and I had Green Bay at 31 last week. I left them in the same order, just moved them down one.
Okay.
So I have the Rams at 31 and Green Bay at 32.
Gotcha. Okay.
And eventually on your board, Green Bay's, you're starting to slip them. Eventually you'll get them down to where they should be. You're starting to slip the Rams. Eventually you'll get them down to where they should be, but you'll come over to my side and we'll be in concurrence.
You'll get me there, man. You're more of an influence than you think you are. So at 31, I dropped Denver down 5 spots. They are in my dumpster fire. And, this is just, it's like, oh, hey, Hackett gave up play calling duties. But guess what? It didn't make anything better. They still suck. And, like I talk about with the Saints, lots of talent on this team, especially on the offensive side of the ball, wasting away. Dumpster fire for now. 32 Houston still pains me every week. I want to see these guys get out of the dumpster fire. But they're not doing themselves any favors. The quarterback change, I think it's necessary. Davis Mills, earlier on in the year, he was showing some good improvement from where he left off last year, but things have kind of tailed off. And, he's not a high draft pick, so you're not going to give him a lot of rope. And so that's just what it is that, too many games where he didn't perform, they had to pull the plug. I get it. I'm not sure Kyle Allen's going to be that much better. But we did see going back a number of years, some decent games with Kyle Allen under Ron Rivera. And so, maybe that helps these guys. I think the key for them is they just got to keep running the crap out of the ball with Dameon Pierce. And so, but that's all they got, really. So that's my dumpster fire, man. All right, James, I think we're good there. Why don't we shift it on over and let's talk about our Week 12 game picks. Before we jump in, I do want to do our recap of where we're at season to date. And so, James, you're sitting at 90 total wins, which is good for 55%. You had 9 wins this past week, which I think is better than you were giving yourself credit for. But I have 97 wins, and holy shit, James, I hit 60%. So you're saying there's a chance? We're going to get there, dude. You can get there. I'm almost, I'm there. Just got to keep it above there. But I had solid week, 11 wins. Not like that one week where you went crazy and won every game. But I felt good about it, and I feel even better that I'm in that 60% range. So with all that being said, man, why don't you take the ball here and run us through the schedule and who the picks are going to be.
All right. First up, we have which all week, the super annoying thing is the fact that since Buffalo played at Detroit, every time, when I heard, the stats updates on Monday, the winners, losers, on the SiriusXM station I listened to, they would always say Buffalo beat Detroit. 2 games after, they say Detroit beat New York.
Yeah.
Because it was at Ford Field. So Buffalo gets to play on the road at Ford Field now instead of home at Ford Field against the Lions. What to say about the Lions? Shall we run through it? Where is my note? The Lions are... See, where is it? Where's... blah, blah, blah. The Lions are 0-14 outright as an underdog on Thanksgiving.
You and your damn stats, man.
The last game they won as an underdog on Thanksgiving was 2003 against Green Bay.
Okay. Well, I don't know.
Now,
yeah,
this is going to be. Let me find my other stat. I kind of have this pick, kind of I kind of put my notes because I did it on two different computers and I didn't combine them. But basically, like, since um, the Lions started the Thanksgiving Day tradition, blah, blah, blah. So, where is the overall record for teams on Thanksgiving? Blah, 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 blah. Detroit is 37, 43, and 2 on Thanksgiving Day.
So you're telling me they used to win on Thanksgiving?
Yes. They used to win on Thanksgiving. I think in like the 2000s, late 90s after Barry was gone, and 2000s when the team was declining, the league started scheduling their harder games on Thanksgiving, and I think that's why that they've had such a bad spell on
Okay.
Thanksgiving, because you're having one of the better teams play just to entice people to watch the matchup. Um,
Yeah, or
with
maybe embarrass them a little bit to push them out of the spot. You know, that's something I've heard about over the years is that the NFL wants to get other teams in there, but they've kind of like done that regardless of them being pushed out. So,
Yeah. Um, so the way for Buffalo to beat the Lions is rushing the ball, which they
oh,
can't do.
interesting. Okay.
The the Lions have one of the worst rush defenses in the league. Buffalo's not that much better, and as we know,
Yeah, but they did just shut down Saquon Barkley, man.
right, the Lions did just shut down Saquon Barkley. Um, the Lions have scored 30 points in their last 3 games. This is their longest single season streak since 1997.
Okay.
3-11, 0-14. The last time the Lions had a 3-game, 30-point scoring streak in 1997, Barry Sanders had 167 yards, 3 touchdowns against the Bears, and Detroit won 55-20 on Thanksgiving Day.
Okay.
Upset special. The Lions beat Buffalo.
Okay. So I got to change your sheet here. I like your enthusiasm. I like that you found a lot of reasons to back it up. Um, you know, I don't know. Some of them weren't really reasons to back it up, but some of them were, I guess. Um, I'm looking at my heat map. I'm not going to go crazy. I show the Lions having a better offensive line than Buffalo, but Buffalo's defensive front seven is very good, and so it's going to be a tough matchup for that offensive line. Um, the rest of the heat map is green for Buffalo, and I've got them winning by 11.5. I think it's great the Lions are coming off of 3 straight, but it's 3 straight off of questionable opponents. And so I know I just bumped them big on my power rankings. I just can't go against one of my top teams on the board. And so I'm taking Buffalo here, man.
I gotcha. Next up, we have the New York Giants at the Dallas Cowboys. So, this game, the spread is 9. And if we were going based on the spread, I would say I would be all day on the Giants.
Okay.
the last since 2020, the Giants on short rest games are 7-0 against the spread. All of them were with Daniel Jones at quarterback, obviously. But Giants aren't going to win this game. I'm going to tie this back to the Lions. A little bit nostalgia because I've heard Gary Danielson talk about this multiple times. Back in 1982, the Lions hosted the Giants and hosted the Giants on Thanksgiving, and this was probably one of the most iconic Thanksgiving Day plays that has occurred. It was the LT interception return, 97-yard interception return for a touchdown, and it ended up being the eventual game-winning touchdown. But the thing about it was as Danielson says it, all week, the coaches were saying, if you see Taylor do this, throw to the other side of the field.
Okay.
If you see Taylor do this, throw to the other side of the field. Danielson says, so what happens? We called this particular play, and I see Taylor do exactly what the coaches said, and in the moment, I threw to the same side of the field because that's what I remembered.
Yeah.
I didn't remember opposite side. I remembered side of the field.
Yeah,
and
it tricked him, yeah.
Sure enough, LT intercepted it, which is what the coaches were saying all fucking week. He will intercept it. He will run it. He's fast. And so I just wanted to touch on that, but the Cowboys win this game. But within a touchdown.
I gotcha. So James, I'm also taking the Cowboys here, and this is one of the ones where I always have to put a filter on it in my model. My model's got Dallas winning by 14.5, but it is a divisional game. They rarely get that out of control. Now, I mean, having seen Dallas just beat down Minnesota, I wouldn't be surprised if they did actually pull off the 14.5, but it's kind of like what we saw this past week with Cincinnati and Pittsburgh is, a lot of people would have thought Cincinnati's going to wipe the floor with them. Pittsburgh hung in there pretty much until the end, and so, I don't want to go crazy here. I think Dallas is going to win. I'm not sure it's going to be that big of a win, but I think they'll get the win.
Mm-hmm. Next up, we have the Thursday night Thanksgiving nightcap with the Patriots at the Vikings.
Okay.
Now I'm going to throw some stats at you. This didn't matter for my model because my model had New England winning 24-14. Kirk Cousins, he is 10-18 in primetime games.
Okay.
2-10 on Monday night. 3-4 on Thursday. 4-4 on Sunday night, and 1-0 on Saturday night.
Okay. No Thursday nights yet?
3-4 on Thursday.
Whoops. Okay.
He's actually been statistically the worst on Thursday night games. When playing primetime on Thursday nights, he has completed 65% of his passes with 11 touchdowns and 11 interceptions.
Okay. Yeah, and he doesn't normally turn the ball over that much, so that's significant.
Yeah. Anyways, on Saturday he has no interceptions. On Sunday nights he's 18 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and on Monday nights he's 17 touchdowns and 11 interceptions.
Okay.
Either way, my model has New England winning this game by 10 points, and I'm sticking with my model.
Shit, you think New England can score 10 points?
I'm thinking 14 of them are
defensive or special teams.
Defensive or special teams, exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean, hey, I could see that. Yeah, I mean, I just I can't trust New England's offense, and so I'm taking.
I give you that.
So I'm taking Minnesota, and and part of it is that I've baked that into my model, is that I've dogged a lot of their offensive ratings, and so my model's got Minnesota winning by 4. And so I'm going to stick with that. I just, we know Minnesota is capable of scoring some points. The Dallas defense, dominant. I know the New England defense can be dominant, but I think that Minnesota, after getting a smack in the face, they're going to make some adjustments. They'll be able to put up some points, and I just don't think New England can match that. So
Yeah, and
I'll go Minnesota.
I think the reason why if it was a Sunday afternoon game, I would have no issues with Washington or with Minnesota winning the game.
Yeah.
But since it is a primetime Thursday night game, I kind of have it in there where,
it's a factor.
Cousins isn't reliable.
I gotcha.
All right. So next up, we have the Denver Broncos at the Carolina Panthers. And this is a weird one because with my model has Denver winning the game. 17-16.
If this was preseason, I would say, yeah, Denver should fucking smoke them. But now seeing everything I've seen,
I can't figure out how Denver wins this game. Yeah, they're going to a backup quarterback, quote unquote. Yeah, it's going to be Sam Darnold, who fucking can't throw the ball. I don't think Denver can do what Baltimore did last week and stop that run game. And I think Carolina wins the game pretty handily. Okay. So I'm going to override my model and go with Carolina. And the Detroit game and Carolina are my only two overrides on my model this week.
Okay, that's good to know. I mean, you say that now, but as you talk through them, you might, convince yourself otherwise. But I'm going Carolina here also, and my model has Carolina winning. I've looked at a couple different factors, and I kind of have a range of 1 point to 4 points is kind of what I see their potential win being by. It's tough, man. Like, everything in me says Denver should be better. They just aren't. And I think Darnold getting a chance to start again is going to want to make it count. I like what you're saying. They should be able to reestablish the running game this week. Denver's defense is good, but are they that good? I don't know. I think, I'm going to go Carolina here. So I'm with you.
And also, the override with Detroit, it's not like I was overriding some huge score. I had Buffalo. My model had Buffalo winning 27-24. Next up, we have the lowly Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Cleveland Browns. I was surprised my model had Tampa Bay scoring 16 points in this game. I think Cleveland is a better team than what we saw against Buffalo. They had some hiccups and they kept it tight with Buffalo. I think Buffalo's a lot better than Tampa Bay. My model has Cleveland winning the game 20-16. I think that's kind of a low-scoring game for Cleveland. I think it's more in the 28 to 35 range for Cleveland, but I don't see Tampa Bay really scoring more than 10 points in the game. I'm going to go with Cleveland.
Okay. So I'm going the other way in this one too. I'm going Tampa Bay. So we got some action this week. It'll be nice, and I think there's more to come. But Tampa Bay's coming off a bye week. I think that's going to help them. And for me, some of it is just that I just can't trust Cleveland, at least not until they get Watson back. They've let me down way too many times this year. I think Tampa Bay had a horrible start to the season. They started to kind of show a little bit of signs of life. They still have a very talented roster. And honestly, the big factor is them coming off the bye week. And so I'm just going to go with them. And this is actually an override in my model, James. One of two. So Tampa Bay for me.
Next up, we have the Baltimore Ravens at the Jacksonville Jaguars. The way Jacksonville gets their offense moving is with the run game, any team running the ball. And with Baltimore, Baltimore is able to stop the run like no other. It's not a traditional Baltimore defense, but they're able to stop the run. Look at last week with Carolina. And my model, when I modeled it out, had Baltimore winning 29-13 in this, and I can't see any reason to think that it would be that close. I think Jacksonville's offense is going to sputter a little bit in this game because they can't get the running game going, and Baltimore is going to win the game pretty handily.
Okay. What did you say your scores were?
29-13.
29-13. Okay.
So 16 points.
I got you. Yeah, I was just curious how close I was with you on this one. I've got Baltimore by 6, and I think part of that is just that their offense has been underwhelming a little bit lately, and it's in Jacksonville, and so I do put a little bit of a boost for the home team. But I agree with you. I think it's going to be a tough matchup for ETN in that Jacksonville running game, and that will put pressure on Trevor Lawrence, who has been much better this year, but still not great. And that's fine. He's in year 2 and he's working his way there, but I don't see him carrying the team to a win over Baltimore. So I'm with you, man.
I just wanted to go back and see what last week my model had Baltimore at, and it was pretty high. So I think there might be a bias for Baltimore's offense that I have to figure out, because it seems like they're way higher pretty much every week.
Well, they were like fucking electric to start the year. They've just kind of sputtered out a little bit.
Yeah. Anyways, I was just curious. So next up we have the Houston Texans at the Miami Dolphins. And I'm not certain my model takes into account the change in quarterback, but then again, Kyle Allen, there is tape out there on him, so I don't know if that affects it, because a lot of times when you bring in these backup quarterbacks that haven't played all year for your team, the team surprises people. It happens every time. Look at was it last year or the year before with Mike White, and how he had 700 touchdowns in the game against, I forget who, Cincinnati maybe last year.
Yeah, that might have been the Cincinnati upset.
Yeah. But with the film being out there on a little bit, so he's not as much of an unknown, I don't think it's as much of a factor. My model has Miami winning 27-19. I think that's about right for this game, and if anything, I think it's a little bit low on the Miami side, and I'm going to stick with that.
Okay. Yeah, this one, I got a monster spread on this one. I got Miami winning by 16, and I would say probably part of that is just that I've been baking in a lot of positivity to Miami this year. They're coming off the bye, and it's in Miami. Heat map wise, I've got Dameon Pierce is better at running back than what Miami has. Other than that, it's green top to bottom for Miami. And so, 16 is a huge spread. I wouldn't die on that hill, James, I'll just tell you that. But with the way Miami's put up points this year, I can definitely see them winning by 16 or more, because Houston struggles, man. They struggle. And so it's, they're like solidly in a rebuild. Miami is like solidly ahead of schedule, and so and I don't even know if that's the right way to put it, because they drafted Tua and whatever, you know what I'm saying. So Miami.
Yeah. All right. Next up, I was looking for something else. I apologize. We have the Chicago Bears at the New York Jets. This one's a difficult one for me. My model has the Bears winning 19-17. Yeah, Mike White is going to be starting at quarterback this week, but also, Fields is banged up, to say the least.
Yep.
I'm trying to see something, but I'm not really coming up. My model has Chicago winning. This one is really, really subject to change, because I have to dive
depends
into
on
it
Fields,
more.
man. Yeah.
It depends on Fields, but I'm going to tentatively stay with Chicago winning this game for Yeah, Chicago.
I got you. Yeah, and I'm going the other way. I'm going with the Jets. I can't put like a spread on it just because I think it's a little bit unpredictable this early in the week. But I think the Jets can get this win. Um, and there's a lot of uncertainty at quarterback. You know, if we get some like major positive news about Fields later on, I might switch it up too. But all I can say is for now, roster wise, I believe the Jets are the better roster. Quarterback wise, I believe Fields is a bit of a game changer, and so that's something that's got to be like recognized later on. But so I'll stick with the Jets for right now.
All right, next up we have Cincinnati Bengals at the Tennessee Titans. And like this was a super close game in it was a 3-point game with Cincinnati winning in my model. I mean, basically for both teams, this is a battle of the running backs. If Mixon is back, there's also a possibility that Jamar Chase is going to be back for the game. I'm going to stick with Cincinnati in this game. I think I have a stronger case if Mixon is playing and Chase is playing, but I think I'm gonna stick with Cincinnati.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, I'm taking Cincinnati here too, James. I've got them winning by less than a point in my model. But like the narrative for me makes sense. I think that Cincinnati is more rounded offensively. Maybe that changes if Mixon's out. But like Tennessee, on the other hand, they're very heavy behind Derrick Henry. And when you look at their passing potential, I don't think it's that great right now because wide receiver wise, they're in trouble. Cincinnati's secondary is also very good, and so they'll be able to expose that matchup. And so I just I feel better about Cincinnati, even though it's on the
Mm.
road.
Next up, we have the Atlanta Falcons at the Washington Commanders. So my model has this. This is one of the bigger spreads of the week for me on my model. Not the biggest because obviously I had like a 16.1 earlier, but my model has the Commanders winning by 7 points, and I think this is going to be a good game. Let's say that from there.
I was just gonna say that.
Both teams are they're on the rise, and it's probably
Yeah, 5-6 and 6-5, man.
yeah, and they've been playing, and Atlanta's been playing better lately, and Washington's been playing better lately. I couldn't find a reason to override my model for Washington or to go with Atlanta, especially with the 7 point spread that my model was coming up with. Um, I think Washington is slightly the better team, and I'm going to stick with Washington.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm with you. I'm going with Washington in my model. I've got Washington by 5.5. But kind of like you were saying, I think this is going to be a really good game. I think it goes down to the wire. I think that these are, like in a lot of ways, very similar teams this
Mm-hmm.
year. Um, you know, wild. I'm actually really looking forward to watching this game, and so I could see it going either way. But my model's got Washington. It's in Washington, and so I'm going to stick with Washington.
Next up, we have the Los Angeles Chargers at the Arizona Cardinals, and this is a game of a team that's on the rise and a team that's on the decline.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Arizona should have Kyler Murray back. I said this earlier, and I 100% agree with this statement that I'm going to say. I know you disagree. This team is better without Kyler at quarterback. This team has better chance to win without Kyler at quarterback.
I mean, it might force him to play more complementary football.
Kyler is not the long-term solution, and they fucked up by giving him as big of a contract as they did, and that's going to set the franchise back for years.
Okay.
My model has the Chargers winning 29-16, and I can't find a reason why this game is that close. I'm going to go with the Chargers.
Yeah, and so James, I actually I like hearing that because this is my second override for this week, and I don't know what's going on in my model, but it's got Arizona winning by 2, and there's no way in hell I'm taking that. So I'm going with the Chargers. I'm dumbfounded. I really don't know why the model is going Arizona. I thought I've adjusted them appropriately. I thought I've adjusted the Chargers appropriately with some of the injuries getting better and all that. But either way, it doesn't pass the smell test. And so I'm going with the Chargers just like you, man.
Next up, we have the Raiders and the Seahawks. And this, in my model disrespects the fuck out of Seattle. Like, just disrespects.
Mine did that for a long time this year. I think it's finally coming around.
Fuck
Yeah.
out of them. I mean, offensively, yeah, rating. You want to go to rating. You want to go to the Madden ratings. Geno Smith isn't shit. Offensively, Geno Smith is playing. Statistically, Geno Smith, obviously offensively, Geno Smith is playing statistically as one of the best quarterbacks in the league this year.
Yeah, I actually while you're talking, I want to look up and see what they've updated Geno Smith to because he was the lowest possible rating to start the year.
85. And the Raiders, they're playing like shit. Yeah, they put it together and beat Denver last week.
So all right, yeah, I don't mean to cut you off, but to start the year, and some of this was that the Madden ratings had him so low, I don't even know what the hell they were, but I gave him the default 67 rating, which is the lowest possible that you can go on lineups, which means that Madden had Geno Smith lower than 67. They have since adjusted him up. Geno Smith now has an 80 rating in Madden. And so he's getting some respect finally, which is good. Yeah. But it just goes to show nobody was expecting anything out of him, man, me included.
Yeah. So the Raiders put it together last week and beat Denver. Thing I forgot to mention about the game. Why the fuck did Nathaniel Hackett call timeout when Denver was about to snap the ball to spike the ball? I'm sorry, when Raiders were about to spike the ball to stop the clock with 17 seconds left so they could kick a fucking field goal. Why the fuck did Nathaniel Hackett call timeout? Can somebody answer this? Why the fuck? Whoa, your defense wasn't ready. They were going to down the ball. You don't need your defense to be ready. They're going to throw the ball at the goddamn ground.
Well, maybe they were going to Marino, fake spike, and go deep. I don't know.
Anyways. Somehow, my fucking model has Seattle winning by 1 fucking point in this game, and I don't know why. It just disrespects the fuck out of Seattle. I'm on Seattle all day on this. There's no way that the game is that close. Seattle probably wins by 10 points.
All right, so James, here's the thing. I'm going Seattle with you. I don't know that your model is messed up dogging Seattle as much because mine is doing the same thing, and I think it's because it's giving more credit to the Raiders than they deserve because we know on paper they've got a really good roster. They just have not put it together this year, and so that might be something to look at if it helps you out. I'm just throwing it your way because that's what I'm seeing in my model is that I think I've adjusted Seattle appropriately and that it's the Raiders that are still maybe a little bit inflated. So, but either way, I'm going with Seattle.
So you say that. Last week I overrode my model and went with Denver. Last week my model had Vegas winning 20-19. So it was 22-16. So I mean, it was
trying to throw you.
It was right. It was right in line. So
I got you.
You may be right. It might after last week's game, it might be giving Vegas too much credit. Too much credit, but
no. I mean, hey, if your model's been legit to this point, I'm just trying to trying to help you
No,
work it out.
I know. But it's been fairly
Yeah.
fairly consistent, and
Well,
what I
you gotta do whatever your ratings are for Kenneth Walker and just slap a freaking 10 burger on top of it because he's legit.
Mhm.
And same thing with Geno. Whatever your rating is, slap a 10 burger on it. You know those wide receivers are legit, so you probably don't need to slap anything on them because they're probably already very high in your model. Their two rookie tackles been playing amazing. You got to boost them up big time. I mean, a lot of that stuff. It's like and then you look at like Tariq Woolen on the defense. Dude, they have had arguably one of the best draft classes we have maybe ever seen in our lifetime. Like
Mhm.
every guy from that draft has been an instant impact player on that team, dude. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's true. Anyways, next up we have the Rams at the Chiefs.
Yes.
Do we even have to talk about this game?
No.
Even with
Just say the
Stafford out,
Chiefs.
is
Yeah.
there do the Rams have any chance? Watch, because we said this, the fucking Rams win, but the
Yeah.
Chiefs are going to dominate this game.
I mean,
Chiefs.
it could be a trap game. You never know. But yeah, I mean, if Kansas City takes their foot off the gas, who knows? I've got them winning by 19. We don't need to go any more than that.
It could be a trap game because the Chiefs play at Cincinnati next week.
I still don't even, put Chad Henne in, keep Mahomes safe. They still beat him, dude.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next up we have the Saints at the 49ers. This is a weird one in my model, and I've considered overriding it, and I think I'm not going to, because the last couple times I've overridden my model when it had the Saints winning,
You got burned.
I got burned. So I'm going to stick with my model. It has a close game, but it has the Saints winning, and I'm going to stick with that.
Hey, you got to do you, man. I will just point out the 49ers are number 2 on your power rankings.
I know that, and my model takes into account a little bit of my power rankings.
Okay.
So I've added that to it, and it still has the Saints winning, and I'm scared to override it because I get burned all the time when I do.
Nah, hey, you gotta go with your gut,
With the Saints
man.
in particular.
Yeah,
With
you
the
gotta go
Saints
with your
in
gut.
particular.
That's fine. I'm going with the 49ers. I'm not digging too deep in it. I like the 49ers just conceptually. I think they're a really good team that's moving in the right direction. And the Saints, they have grossly underperformed. They've gotten a couple wins here and there, and that's great. I can't trust them at all. And so I'm taking San Fran, man.
So next up we have the Sunday night game, the Green Bay Packers at the San Francisco 49ers, or at the Philadelphia Eagles. Sorry, my eyes.
On September 19th, 2021.
Alexa, stop.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, what do you got? Like a
The voice assistant, and it heard something I said. Anyways, so I'm trying to glance back, and I don't see my model in the past weeks having Green Bay way overrated. I don't see in my model in the past few weeks having Philadelphia way underrated.
Okay.
And so my model came up with Philadelphia winning this game by 1 point. And that doesn't make sense to me, why it would only be 1 point. I'm hardcore on the Eagles in this game. Green Bay's a dumpster fire team. Green Bay it's like seriously, just bench Rodgers and figure out what you have in Jordan Love, because it's a lost season and you might get some trade value if Rodgers doesn't completely get incredibly hurt.
Yeah.
And the more he plays, the more his trade value goes down.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very real possibility as we get further into the season. And I mean, I say further into the season, we're already like going into the back third here. But yeah, I'm going Philly, man. My model's got Philly by 10. And so, I have Green Bay's running backs being better than Philly's, but it almost like doesn't count because Jalen Hurts runs the ball too and runs
Hmm.
the ball really well.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know me, man. I love the frickin' Philly trenches, dude. I love them big time. I think they're going to get pressure on Rodgers. I think that they're going to keep Hurts protected. Uh, I, I I can't make a case. I can't make a case. So I'm going Philly.
Okay, I respect that. We have the Monday night game, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Indianapolis Colts. And I kind of want to, like, both these teams are on the rise. I want to look something up real quick because,
Well, if you want to look something up, I'll give you my pick.
well, no, 'cause- well, my model has Indy winning 20-17, which is what I'm going with, and I want to say that Indy scored more on Philly than Pittsburgh did, and Philly scored more on Pittsburgh than Indy did.
All right, so you're going circular.
Yeah, Philly beat Pittsburgh 35-13 2 weeks ago,
Okay.
3 weeks ago.
Without Watt.
With with that's a good point. I'm going to stick with my model. I think it's going to be a good game. Both teams are playing better. I'm very intrigued by this game, but I think I'm going to stick with my model. As game time, as Monday comes closer, I might change, but for now, I'm going to stick with Indy winning.
I know. Hey, I got you, man. And I'm going Pittsburgh. My model's got them by 1.5. But like we've talked about, this is sort of like a mystery game with Jeff Saturday and company in Indy. But I also like sort of like the narrative and some of those factors in Pittsburgh with Kenny Pickett getting a little better every week, Watt back in the mix. And so this is a tough one because I could see this game going either way. I actually like both of these teams, and so it's like I'm not really rooting one way or another, but
Mhm.
I'm just going to take my model, and so I'm going Pitt by 1.5 here, man.
And then, since next week we're doing Friday, we have the Thursday night game of the Buffalo Bills at the New England Patriots.
Yes.
And the last time these two teams played in prime time, that was like the 10-3 game in the torrential rainstorm in
Oh.
New England, at New England last year. It was like a terrible game. You could barely watch it because it was so bad. You could
can't.
barely see the field.
Yeah. And was that the game where New England ran the ball like all but like 3 times?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So like you can't like count anything from that game to this game.
Right, I know that, but I was just prefacing my hesitation on my pick with that.
Okay.
Because I am hesitant on it because Buffalo historically does not play well at New England. That was just another example. Belichick flips on the weather switch and says, "What do you want today?"
And I'm going to be a
snow?
magician.
It's going to be snow, and I'm going to figure it out. I'm going with Buffalo on it. I have a lot of heartburn going with Buffalo on this game. Especially with how New England has handled Buffalo in New England in recent history, but I'm on Buffalo.
I got you. Yeah, I'm going Buffalo here, and it's hard to not go Buffalo here. And I know what you're saying is that like Belichick is like sneaky good in these kind of divisional games like this where it always makes you feel a little bit uneasy. My model's got Buffalo by 4 if it makes you feel any better. You would think Buffalo, New England, face value this year, Buffalo should be a way bigger favor. But, there's some unpredictability here. And so I'm taking Buffalo as well, buddy. Okay, so that gets us through the picks, James. Why don't we mosey on over and let's do our question of the week. which I've been teasing a little bit tonight, that this is related to the Los Angeles Rams. And so, without doing a ton of research, because it's a short week, and I just wanted to get this in there because I read an article that related to this. But I just want to ask, are the 2022 Los Angeles Rams the worst defending Super Bowl champion? And, my opinion, like I said, without having gone back and looked at every team, is that maybe it's not of all time, but it is for sure of this era. I mean, they won on defense, but also Sean McVay's like lights out offense, and Stafford was that missing piece to that offense. They're the 31st ranked offense this year, James. That's embarrassing for Sean McVay, and they're sitting at 3-7. I think that this is a little bit unrelated, obviously, to the Super Bowl component, except that for the Lions, it burns that we traded Stafford, and he goes out and he wins the Super Bowl the first year. But as a Lions fan, I feel like we're getting probably about as good of redemption as we could possibly get this year, which is that on this current pace, the pick that we get from the Rams is going to be the number 6 overall pick, whereas the Lions pick is going to be number 13. And so that's like, hey, look, man, we got better, they got worse. The shot in the arm for them, they won last year, good for them. Stafford was never going to do it for us anyhow. And you know that I've got a lot of bitterness about that. But I'll go just a step further and talk about McVay. He laughed at the Patriots for drafting Cole Strange in the first round. And I know he's since kind of backtracked on some of that. And I think you've talked about some of that. And all that's fine. But the bottom line is they're the team that needed to do way more with their offensive line. And, as messed up as the Patriots are, they're still good in the trenches. They're dysfunctional in other areas, but the lack of strength in the trenches has totally disabled that Rams offense, and that's supposed to be McVay's freaking bread and butter, man. I hate it when head coaches lose sight of things like that, and so. I don't know. I think they're the worst of this era. I don't know if I could say of all time without going back and checking records and narratives for things of the teams of the past, but that's just my opinion, man. What do you think?
I got you covered.
Thank you. I'm glad you did some homework.
And I ranked the 55 other Super Bowl champions, worst to best.
Okay.
After the season after. So the season I'm going to cite is the season after they won the Super Bowl. 1982 San Francisco 49ers. And this is excluding the Rams. 1982 San Francisco 49ers. 82 was a strike shortened year. 49ers were 3-6. They were 23rd in points allowed. 1981 Oakland Raiders. They finished 7-9. They had the quarterback controversy with Plunkett leading them to the previous Super Bowl. They were shut out 3 straight games, and they benched him for Flores.
Okay.
2013 Baltimore Ravens. This team was probably the last team that did not play on Thursday night to open the season because of an Orioles game. Manning, first game of the season, though, Manning threw for 7 touchdowns against them.
Holy shit.
They finished 8-8, and Joe Flacco threw 22 interceptions.
Okay.
1999 Denver Broncos. This was the year after Elway retired. Enough said. 1991 New York Giants. Parcells and defensive coordinator, Parcells and Belichick left the team.
Yeah.
They finished 8-8. 1988 Washington football team.
Well, they were the Redskins back then, so that's fine.
Redskins. So they won the Super Bowl. Started 3 different quarterbacks that season. In 88, Rippon was their quarterback. Doug Williams then was benched for Rippon. Their running back had a severe injury. They were unable to get anything done. They went 7-9, but they bounced back soon after. 2006 Pittsburgh Steelers. Roethlisberger. That's Roethlisberger's motorcycle crash and appendectomy in the offseason. Roethlisberger, 18 touchdowns, 23 interceptions. They started 2-6, finished 8-8. That was Cowher's last year. 68 Packers. Lombardi was no longer coach. He retired after Super Bowl II. He had the nucleus. They went 6-7-1 under the new coach. They still had all their players, but it was kind of like they were at the end. They had the dynasty through the 60s. And I'm going to go one more, and I'm going to make my point.
Sure.
2003 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This was the team that they basically...
Yeah, they won it with Brad Johnson and Warren Sapp and Gruden.
They kicked Keyshawn Johnson basically off the team. They went 7-9. They still had a top-level defense, but it just wasn't there. And then they didn't win for a long time. And I would say one more.
Yeah.
And my point, because it's a good one. 2016 Denver Broncos. This was the year after Manning retired.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Trevor Siemian was their starting quarter. Like who?
Yep.
He was okay. He was supposed to be a 7th rounder. Their run defense sucked. They struggled on offense. Aqib Talib happened to be a Pro Bowler. They were 9-7, but they made the playoffs. I'm sorry, but they nearly made the playoffs.
Okay, all right.
Out of all of those, there's an underlying theme.
Yep.
Something outside the organization happens, or they lose a coach, or the quarterback retires, or even the strike shortened season.
The strike season, that's a tough one. But yeah, like
a tough one.
It's almost like that's the only one record wise that's really even comparable. All the other ones, it's like basically the Rams almost have to win out just to even get to one of those levels where those teams had like justifiable reasons for falling off.
And also with the strike shortened year, they happened to lose their first 2 games. They only played 9 games that year. There was the strike in the middle, so they started 0-2, and they just couldn't get it together.
Mm-hmm.
But that pause in the middle, it's a lot of stuff that could have affected the team. Yes, the Rams lost an offensive tackle and a left offensive tackle and a right guard. Everybody else on the Rams returned.
Yep.
They added to the defense.
Yeah, and to replace Von Miller, they brought in Bobby Wagner.
Exactly. And yet they still are losing. Unequivocally, the answer is yes, the Rams are the worst defending Super Bowl champion out of all 56 Super Bowl champions.
Well, I appreciate you doing that deep research, because I wanted to go that distance like you did, and I just didn't have time this week. but I also didn't want to miss the question because I just read an article about it the other day, and I thought, man, we better talk about this and strike while the iron's hot. These guys have been fucking god awful, man.
And you will be surprised. Ironically, I mentioned the 1982 49ers as previous to the Rams being the worst one, but that was a certain year.
Yeah.
Number one, I ranked the 1989 San Francisco 49ers. And I had only one defending Patriots team. Oh, and I mentioned the 68 Packers. 67 Packers I had at number 9. But I only had one defending Patriot, because you have, 7 or whatever they did under Brady.
Yeah.
Only one of them do I have in the top 10, and that's at number 4, the 2004 Patriots. And the 2004 Patriots, they went 14-2, and just barely beat by the Colts, the year the Colts won.
Okay.
And also I had the 99 Broncos. The 98 Broncos were number 4.
Gotcha.
Just a little insight into my rankings, how I did. So I did a lot.
Hey, that's good, man. No, I appreciate you going the distance because, it enhances the show. It enhances, our reasons for bringing these things up, because we're not just like pulling stuff out of thin air. We're wanting to engage. We're wanting to actually call these things out. These are big things, man. And this is a team. I'll say this on the plus side, they do still have the core in Stafford, Kupp, and Donald through 2024 is what I read. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, they can still hypothetically, fill in that offensive line and maybe make a run next year. But the fact that they let it happen this year is just embarrassing, man.
Yeah, but that's the thing is, the team that I had as the worst previous to that was the 49ers, who in the 82 49ers, which was right after their first Super Bowl, and they won 5 or 6 of them in the 80s, 5 of them I think in the 80s to 90s.
Yeah,
so after that,
totally redeemed themselves. Yeah,
totally redeemed themselves. So there's room for it. It just happened with the 49ers that year that I had this worst. There was outside influences, and I think there might be something outside or overconfidence wise on the Rams this year.
I gotcha. All right, man. Well, hey, listen, I think that was a good question of the week, and I appreciate you doing that research. As we're wrapping it up here for tonight, James, I did want to mention to you, maybe you didn't know this, but over the last 2 months, we have more than doubled our subscriber count. And so,
really,
Gridiron Grinder taken off, my friend. And I'm not gonna give you the numbers, because the one time I told you we grew by 10%, you're like, oh, whoop-de-doo, we got one more subscriber.
Are we at 100 yet?
No, we're not at 100 yet.
Tell me the numbers when we get to 100.
Sure, when we get to triple digits, I got you.
Yeah.
But either way, hey, listen, I appreciate everybody who's watching. It's cool. We do this every week. It's a lot of fun. And, just as a closing thought from my end, I'm sure you can mimic this. It's Thanksgiving tomorrow. Hopefully everybody's safe tonight and enjoys the holiday. And fuck, man, Thanksgiving's a good football day. So it's super cool, man.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Any closing thoughts from you, man?
No, I think I went a little too far in the question of the week and talked a little bit too much. So I'm going to cap it there.
Oh, you can never talk too much. What was good, man? I'll catch you later, James.
All right, sounds good.
Gridiron Grinder. Hut, hut, hike.